Kicking off the list at number 10, Dawn of the Dead. Making his first appearance in Taskmaster Volume 2, Issue 2. Okay, right off the bat, this guy rocks. I mean, look at this dude's style. Come on, he knows he's poppin'. He's a former SHIELD operative, and while he was a military advisor to the Mexican Armed Forces, he had met Taskmaster. Now, after he had left SHIELD, he got this amazing new persona, Dawn, D-O-N, of the Dead, which is my new favorite name for any villain ever. That's it. He pretends to be Mexican and was elected a governor in Western Mexico. It was there that he was trained by Taskmaster, and now he's the leader of his very own cartel that focuses on methamphetamine. Nice. So this is a wild villain. Every panel of this guy is super flashy and very dramatic. Course. He's also quite the performer. In his first issue, you see him addressing a crowd of Hannah Montana wannabes, saying that this is what real narcos sounds like. Again, the guy from SHIELD pretending to be Mexican. Awesome. Duly noted.
And before we move on with our list, guys, if you could just go ahead and toss us a thumbs up, because you know it helps us a lot here at the studio. And thank you very much to everyone that has already done that. Thank you. Number 9, Macho Gomez. Macho shows up as a random villain to Deadpool in issue 32 of his 2008 series. He is basically an alien hitman who thinks he's the best. Definitely better than the earthbound merc with a mouth, Deadpool. In reality, he proves to not be as great as he thought he was. Deadpool makes quick work of him and then ends up going on a space adventure to get paid and to prove his mettle to the galaxy and the universe. This prompts an epic space opera arc where Deadpool takes over Macho's life, taking his former job and even marrying his widow.
Number 8, the Builders. The oldest race in the universe, and they actually consider themselves perfect beings. Okay, wow, we're gonna go there. I see you. Yeah, okay, you're perfect. Sweet. Beyonce and the Builders. Man, that's a tough one. Here we go. They're so perfect. I mean, how do we pick between the two, you know? They worship the Mother Maker herself, the universe. The Builders created these aggressive systems to direct, shape, and control the very structure of space and time. So they think they're the sh**. There are two types of builders, the creators and Bob the Builders. No, there's creators and then the engineers. They seeded worlds for billions of years and directed the evolution of civilization. I mean, I get it, you're cool, you're old, you think y'all are the best. You're not perfect though, okay? Spoiler alert, you look like bugs. Huh? You guys look like Ultron if he was covered in cow sh**.
Number 7, Immortal Abomination. Immortal Abomination is the devastating monster that first appeared in Immortal Hulk issue 18. He appears to be genetic material belonging to Emil Blonsky spliced with that of Rick Jones, which gives us a really messed up version of Rick with 2 heads in a monster body. This version of Rick Jones and Abomination is also referred to as Subject B. Eventually, he was put down later on in Immortal Hulk, but he is a horrifying, powerful, and emotionally painful creature for the Hulk to come up against, especially considering how close he and Rick Jones were. This version of Abomination, it should be noted, is different from the Abomination that we later come to know originally as General Reginald Fortean. The General Fortean version of Abomination first appeared in issue 19 of the Immortal Hulk series. Number 6, Ultimatum. Ultimatum is basically Dark Miles Morales from Earth 616. He grew up as part of the Rigoletto crime family and later in his life ended up serving time in prison in place of his cousin. Although Miles Morales, aka Spider-Man, has basically been moved to the Prime Universe of Earth 616 and made it his new home, following the destruction of his original universe, the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610 and the Incursions, there was another Miles Morales who originally was from the main continuity, from Earth 616. We'll call him 616 Miles Morales, try to make this less confusing for you. That Miles Morales of Earth 616 became a villain, working in league with Kingpin, aka Wilson Fisk. 616 Miles has a scarred face and ends up becoming the villain known as Ultimatum. 616 Miles actually took that villain alias of Ultimatum and was planning on trying to send 1610 Miles, Spider-Man, back to his original universe and take over Brooklyn in the ongoing comic series Miles Morales Spider-Man. He was momentarily stopped, however, by Spider-Man himself and Prowler, who escaped his clutches. Miles versus Miles, who wins? Too many Miles! Just kidding, you can never have too many Miles Morales in my opinion. Number 5, Black Winter. Black Winter was actually an old villain sort of made new and shiny again. Originally we came to know this cosmic evil constant as the Creeping Plague, although I do like the name Black Winter better than Creeping Plague. It was credited with being the entity responsible for the death of the cosmos prior to its rebirth when Galen was first transformed into the being known as Galactus. The Black Winter was meant to be this massive, unstoppable eldritch villain, though shortly after its full appearance in Thor issue number 4 from 2020, it was swiftly defeated 2 issues later. It's not so unstoppable. Though it did require the power of Galactus, which Thor wielded in order to destroy the Black Winter, getting a brief glimpse of his possibly perilous future in its last falling snowflake. So yeah, it did require a lot of power, I guess, to take it out, but still, it was only 2 issues. They were like, this thing, it's massive, and defeated, no probs. Oh yeah, the Black Winter is also kind of like an eldritch storm that basically erases the existence of all it comes into contact with, and it comes with bonus visions of your own destruction. Number 4. Xeno. Xeno is a mutant terrorist group who is composed of others from previous mutant hate groups. The idea is all those mutant hate groups have now unified like the mutants themselves, becoming this new group known as Xeno, which was written to be a play on the word xenophobia. Xeno managed to capture mutant Domino and use her skin to mask their own soldiers as mutants so that they could infiltrate Krakoa and massacre as many mutants as possible before the alarm sounded in the mutant nation. During their first appearance, they managed to assassinate mutant leader Charles Xavier. Though fortunately Charles was able to be resurrected following this instance, and Krakoa covered up the successful assassination to make it seem as though he was never killed in the first place. Because you know, you can't let other world leaders know that your world leader was assassinated. That's it's not so good. Number 3. Isca the Unbeaten. Isca is the sister of Genesis, and as such is Apocalypse's sister-in-law. She is a mutant from Morocco who is fighting against our mutant heroes of Krakoa in the Otherworld tournament, intended to settle their dispute as decided by Opal Luna Saturnine, the omniversal magistrix of the Starlight Citadel, as seen in the current X-Men event 10 of Swords. Isca's mutant power is an epic one. She can never be beaten. Krakoan mutants Magic and Cable, both set to testing her power prior to the tournament's start, had a great feast that was held the evening before, finding them to be quite impressive. They wondered what would happen if she were to face their lucky friend Domino, and Isca assured them that whoever this Domino was, she would certainly lose. And I gotta say, after seeing Isca go to work, I think I would agree. Isca's gonna probably win in a fight against Domino. Let me know what you think about that.
Number 2. Evil Deadpool. Making his first appearance in Deadpool Volume 2, Issue 44, Evil Deadpool is somebody I think we're gonna see pretty shortly on the big screen. Yes, of course, I have a theory here. So the origins of Evil Deadpool are pretty wild. So Ella Whitby, who we all remember as the British psychiatrist who's obsessed with the loudmouth, but just how obsessed you ask? Well, I mean, she collects body parts from Wade Wilson and then leaves them in her freezer, right next to the ice packs and frozen pizzas, of course. So when Deadpool found this cool box of yuck, he tossed the parts in a dumpster. Now, Wade's healing factor is so good. How good is it, Taylor? Well, they all formed together and grew back. Ugh, imagine the smell. He ended up stealing a private jet and traveled to the States, where he ran into his other half, literally. The tiny legs part in Deadpool 2 was great and super funny, but what's up with his second half? Are they growing another Deadpool? I sure hope so. The evil twin thing seems to be working well. We'll watch 1,000 of those all day, every day.
Number 1. Solemn. Solemn is one of the champions fighting on the side of Uranos during the 10 of Swords event. Initially, we were introduced to him in 2020's Wolverine in issue 6, where he appeared as the perfect match for Wolverine. But although we've seen them dance around one another and even team up to take on a demon horde in hell, we still have yet to see these two battle one another. The reason why they seem so appropriately matched? Solemn is an Iraqi mutant with adamantium skin, meaning he, in comparison to Wolverine's adamantium skeleton, is on the same level of durability. As far as we know, he doesn't possess Wolverine's advanced healing factor though, but he is known for being a smooth talker, and both himself and Wolverine each possess a Muramasa blade, meaning that they would be easily able to slice each other up with their swords. Because, you know, Muramasa cut through anything. Also take your powers away. Number 8. Mr. Misery. Mr. Misery is a Doctor Strange villain that was actually created by Doctor Strange himself. Some people create their own villains. Oof. Some people are their own villains. Ah. Mr. Misery was a creature that embodied all the pain and misery that Strange had suffered from using magic during his time as Sorcerer Supreme. The beast was also commonly referred to as the Thing in the Cellar. At least, well, that's what it was originally referred to as. We'll get to that in a second. The Thing in the Cellar was released when all magic was threatened during the attack of the technological army known as Empirical. Mr. Misery is actually the name the creature took for itself after Doctor Strange was forced to reckon with it following its accidental release. Strange freed the creature by depositing his suffering and pain instead into the people that he had saved, dividing it up so that each only carried a small piece of it within them. These people were also willing to do so as they had been saved by Strange in the past. So they were like, yo, Strange is my guy, I'll take a little bit of pain for you, no problem. Even after being freed, Mr. Misery continued to crave the pain and suffering of others, which is, you know, why he took the name Mr. Misery and became a villain. Or they. It. It's kind of like a blob. Number 7. Hydra Supreme. Hydra Supreme was the name Captain America took when he became evil. He only became evil, of course, because Kobik, the cosmic cube in the form of a little girl, altered reality to make him a secret sleeper agent for Hydra throughout his history. Reality was then changed so that every action Captain America, Steve Rogers, had taken up to this point was all part of a long con to take over the United States of America after gaining their trust implicitly before revealing his true colors. Fortunately, the original Captain America still existed within the cosmic cube, or the shards of it, and once released was able to fight against and defeat his evil alternate reality counterpart. Woohoo! But also not woohoo if you were a fan of Hydra Supreme.
Number 6. Deadpool Corps. Making their debut in 2010, Deadpool Corps are, well, they're a team of Deadpools, as you would have guessed. Their first issue, prelude to Deadpool Corps issue 1, they are founded by Earth 616 Deadpool after the Contemplator chose him to be the one to stop this cosmic entity, the Awareness. Super aware. The Awareness does this really neat thing where it devours the multiverse consciousness. Awesome. The Deadpool Corps have a unique mind that makes them immune to it. And they ride in style, using the B. Arthur as means of transportation. Which is not a bad ride at all. I mean, I'd pull up with that. Let's go. The Deadpool Corps joined forces after Dreadpool formed an evil version of the Corps. That, of course, had out to, massacre every version of himself in the multiverse. And the Deadpool Corps were short-lived, but as usual, a lot of bloody disgusting fun.
Number 5. Assessor. Assessor is an AI who is working in tandem with Ultimatum, or more specifically, working for him. For those who don't know, Ultimatum is basically like evil Miles Morales, who was the Miles of the main continuity of Earth 616 originally. If you want to learn more about him, we actually talked about him in part 2 of this list series, so you can go back and check that out. Assessor, as a villain, is basically like a humanoid appearing Gladys from the Portal video game series. They had heroic Miles Morales brought to a testing center where they could run tests to gain in-depth information on his powers, threatening to harm his family members if he did not cooperate. Assessor does not appear to have any human emotions and only allowed Miles to escape after they were satisfied with the information they had already procured from the tests. It's unknown who created Assessor or where exactly they come from. It's all very mysterious.
Number 4. Detroit Steel. Making his debut in Invincible Iron Man Volume 2, Issue 25, we have another big badass suit guy, Doug Johnson III. A former army soldier who ended up working for Hammer Industries. He was the pilot rocking the big bad America suit. Everybody had thought that Doug was dead, and usually when this happens, it's either awful or it works out in your favor. I know from experience, So Mok, Breaker of Faith, turned him into stone during conflict. Then, when good guy Odin restored everybody, he was, of course, one of them. His family, the army, and Hammer Industries still thought that he was dead though, so he decided to use this in his favor. He got his passport, returned to America, then kidnapped Sasha Hammer in order to get the Detroit Steel armor back in his hands. Justine Hammer was on board with this whole plan. Obviously, she was going to blow up the armor as soon as she got the chance, right? Well, Dougie Johnny III was already way ahead of the game. He had hacked Hammer's systems earlier so that it had no effect on him, which is not a bad idea at all.
Number 3, Uranos. Okay, technically this guy actually appeared in What If number 24 in September of 1980, but 1, he looks completely different, 2, he wasn't doing anything until now, and 3, he's cool, so I don't really care. Uranos the Undying is Thanos' grand uncle, and one of the deadliest beings in the Marvel Universe. Uranos, like every Eternal, was created by the Celestials 1 million years ago, but he believed the Eternals best fulfilled their purpose if they exterminated both the Deviants and the humans, all life outside the universe, and imprisoned the Celestials. Luckily, his brothers Kronos and Oceanus disagreed, plunging the Eternals into civil war. Now, he ultimately lost that war and was captured by his brothers and became the first Eternal to be imprisoned within the Exclusion, where he stayed for over 500,000 years because of the failsafe he imposed upon the machine. That failsafe being that if he dies, his greatest celestial designed weapons will be unleashed. Recently, mutants have been revealed to be related to deviants, making the X-Men enemies to the Eternals, and the Eternal Druid called on Uranos for help in Axe Judgment Day number 1. And to show how powerful he is, in a matter of 20 minutes, Uranos eradicated Cable, Magneto, and David Haller, otherwise known as Legion, along with a bunch of other very powerful mutants. He's scary.
Number 2. Annihilation. Annihilation was at first a mysterious villain who appeared in the X-Books. Eventually, however, we learned that Annihilation was actually a demonic and possessive force which had taken over Genesis, who was forced to take up the golden helm of Annihilation after defeating the villain. It was basically a losing battle either way, as if Genesis lost, she would have died, but in winning, she was forced to take up the helm and then lead the demonic forces of Amenth, which had so long plagued Araco and its people. So it's like a if you win, you lose, and if you lose, you lose. Genesis turned out as well to be the long-lost wife of Apocalypse. Apocalypse had left his wife, children, and people eons ago in an attempt to help saving Araco from the Amenthi forces that threatened to one day overtake it. In the end, Apocalypse, with the assistance of Saturnine, helped to free Genesis from the hold of Annihilation, and the helm was turned into a staff that was less influential on its host and more easily used as a tool instead of, possessing the will of whomever possessed it. Annihilation had their first appearance in X-Men issue number 12 from 2020.
Number 1. Monolith. This likely villain is so new it was hard to even find information about her. First appearing in July of 2022, which is last month unless you're in the future, in Hulk number 9, Monolith is the very strong, big pink queen of Hulk Planet. Hulk Planet is set to be the title of the new Hulk story arc taking place after Hulk's whole Titan Hulk thing and the fight with Thor that just took place. The planet itself is situated right next to a gamma-emitting star, so if you haven't guessed yet, Hulk Planet is indeed a planet covered in Hulks. Banner, piloting the Starship Hulk, finds the Hulk planet while on a mission for isolation. Instead, he meets Monolith, who offers him a place among the other Gamma beings where Hulk can exist in peace. But of course, there seems to be more to Monolith than meets the eye, and we kind of just have to wait until we can find out more information. It is likely safe to assume that as the leader of a planet of Gamma mutates, Monolith is very strong and very powerful. Will Hulk find peace? That's not usually how it goes, but only time will tell.
Number 10. Mr. Negative. Starting off strong, we have a supervillain who was introduced in 2007 and yet despite being newer to the Spider-Man supervillain roster, has quickly risen in terms of his evil acclaim. Mr. Negative's true identity still remains somewhat of a mystery to us. He was originally a member of a gang in China known for human trafficking. Looking to escape the criminal life, he stole the identity of one of the human cargo who had perished on the journey to the States, Martin Lee, who was setting out to America to join his wife. Martin Lee, and now that's what we think when we think Mr. Negative. He ended up kidnapped by Simon Marshall, who was developing a drug called D-Light, the experimentation of which often led to the death of those who tested it. He forcefully tested it on fake Martin Lee, aka Mr. Negative, and 2 other hostages of his who somehow survived the process. The 3 escaped and as a result of the experimental drug, developed superpowers attached to the Dark Force and Light Force. Martin Lee would become Mr. Negative, and the other 2 prisoners, Tyrone Johnson and Tandy Bowen, would become Cloak and Dagger. The effects also caused a split within Mr. Negative's personality, dividing the evil criminal persona of Mr. Negative from the kind and sweet persona of Martin Lee. Mr. Negative has the power to corrupt a person, bringing out the dark side of them with just a touch. He can also imbue weapons with the Dark Force, making them stronger, or increasing their strength, whatever. Anyways, that's it. That's all you gotta know about Mr. Negative apparently. I told you enough, I told you his origins. Number 9. Hippo. I felt we had to include Hippo because a lot of these villains have just a lot of intense and serious elements to them, and they're all terrifying in their own way, but Hippo does a good job of providing some of the lightness to the new Spider-Man villain scene. After all, Spider-Man comics are often known for having some of the most, ridiculous villains? Comical villains? How can we put that? I don't want to insult them. Not to say that hippos aren't terrifying, by the way, because they are. You don't want to mess with a hippo. I know that. I certainly would not mess with a hippo. Still, Mrs. Fluffy Lumpkins, as Hippo was once known when he was a zoo animal, has a pretty comical backstory, being transformed randomly by the High Evolutionary and then setting out to rob banks because he knows no one would hire a semi-human hippo. The life of a supervillain. It's tough when you're part hippo, part human. Number 8. Massacre. Massacre is a pretty meaningful villain when it comes to those of them that reflect the issues of the times as well, though he is a little on the nose when it comes to this. He was caught up in an attack on Wall Street, and while his wife died during the attack, he survived, though shrapnel became lodged in his brain, and this shrapnel affected his feelings, causing him to basically become detached from his own emotions and his own humanity, enabling him to become a sociopathic villain. He set up shooting people at random, but was apprehended and spared by Spider-Man. He then did some time in Ravencroft, basically the Arkham Asylum of Marvel. After getting out of Ravencroft though, he went right back going on a shooting spree. But this time he was able to leverage millions of dollars out of the mass shooting. shooting. During this attack though, he was confronted by Superior Spider-Man, aka Otto Octavius, who was in Spider-Man's body. Otto shot him and this allowed Massacre to feel fear again for the first time, which he reveled in before he basically died. But he might not be dead, so it's fine.
Number 7. Horticulture. Ever since I learned about this group, I will take any opportunity to talk about them. Horticulture is a group of 4 older women between the ages of 64 to 81 who are all expert botanists. They are Augusta Brones, Lily Lamus, Edith Scutch, and Opal Vedivere. And their goal is simple. Sort of. Essentially, they want to bring Earth back to a more pristine time. A time when it had about 7 billion less people on it. Yes, these ladies want to basically exterminate most of the Earth's human population and bring plants back to the forefront, and specifically flowers, which is kind of a lovely idea, sort of. This goal brings them into conflict with the X-Men in 2019's X-Men number 3, because the nation of Krakoa, that the mutants call home, have been mass producing these flowers with different bio and tech purposes, and these ladies would like to use them for their villainous goals. Beyond biological modifications believed to have been made to themselves, the women of Horticulture are experts at manipulating the environment to suit their extinction agenda. And they're also computer programmers, selling software to the anti-mutant group Orcus to monitor Krakoan gateways. So now you know.
Number 6. Cordyceps Jones. Although he might not be as new as some of the other villains mentioned here, Cordyceps Jones is still a relatively new villain, if you've been out of comics for the last few years at least. He first appeared back in 2017 in Rocket issue number 4 and was created by Al Ewing and Adam Gorham. Cordyceps Jones is known for having a salacious reputation across the cosmos. He's a 30,000-year-old fungal parasite who, due to his longevity, has made an intergalactic fortune and is known for owning many successful casinos across the cosmos. Recently, he appeared in the X-Men series where he seems to be threatening the existence of Earth, setting up a bet for fun to see who can be the first to wipe it out. Because, you know, that's what you do when you're a rich fungal parasite and you've been around for too long. That's what happens. You're like, gotta make some bets.
Number 5. The Sinister Adaptoid. Okay, so the Super Adaptoid ain't no kind of new villain either, but an Adaptoid that takes on the abilities and likeness of all the members of the Sinister Six, that's certainly something new. In Amazing Spider-Man number 6 from 2022, which also happens to mark Amazing Spider-Man number 900 in legacy numbering, a second and improved version of the Living Brain emerges as the story's primary antagonist on Peter Parker's birthday. His main goal? Trying to find out who Spider-Man is. To that end, he kidnapped all of Spider-Man's most frequently deadly foes, the Sinister Six, and created a Super Adaptoid with them. It's like 25 feet tall, strong, fast, zappy, honor-obsessed, 8-legged, mysterious, and it likes to quote some of the Six's lines. Spider-Man ends up having to team up with the captured 6 villains to fight the Adaptoid, but it's actually the villains' inability to properly work together that makes the Adaptoid malfunction and destroy itself. It's kind of funny how that works. As for the Living Brain, he ends up switching sides when Spider-Man refuses to let the 6 destroy it, and saves the day before revealing it actually already knows Peter's real name. Kinda weird.
Number 4. Orcus. Orcus is the entire villainous organization that first appeared in House of X issue number 1, back when Dawn of X was just starting up and it was all fresh and new and we were like, a new mutant thing and it's so good, and now we're like, please don't ever end, but it's probably gonna end soon, so I'll just go into the closet and cry forever. Don't worry about it. Orcus is an anti-mutant organization that is pro-human and as such is all about the advancement of AI, such as Nimrod and Sentinels, to help protect humanity against the growing mutant threat. Like there's gonna be some people in the comments who are gonna say, actually, Nimrod is technically a Sentinel, and you're right, but also, don't worry about it. Orcus sees mutant evolution as a threat to humanity's existence, but little do they know, the AI they're creating is likely to serve as an even greater threat to humanity's existence in the future, based on everything that we've seen, and every alternate universe we've ever explored where that has continued. Many have joined Orcus since we were first introduced to them, with even a few mutants betraying their own kind to join their ranks. Number 3. Kindred. Kindred was hinted at in the comics more than a decade before he made his comic book debut in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, Issue 5. He is maybe one of the best villains because he is still so shrouded in mystery. We don't know a lot about him. In fact, I'm not even sure if he is a he. Could end up being a she. We don't really know. This villain can control and create centipedes and is a demon spawn. In life, he was someone who is close to Peter Parker, hence his codename Kindred. Kindred spirit, get it? He affectionately has referred to Peter as Pete. All we know so far is that he's out for blood when it comes comes to Norman Osborn, and also has a grudge against Pete for some reason as well. He was also powerful and terrifying enough to have had Mysterio pledge loyalty to him. So you know, like kind of a bigger bad than Mysterio. Mysterio's pretty big bad, pretty big. Number 2, Dr. Octopus. Well, Dr. Octopus is one of the oldest and most iconic Spider-Man villains around. I know y'all were about to be like, but wait, Dr. Octopus, he came out in issue 3. Though Chameleon actually was first, came out in issue 1, there was an amazing alternate version of him that needs to be acknowledged. In Into the Spider-Verse, we got to meet a female version of Doc Ock known as Olivia Octavius. So why do we love her? Well, because she is terrifying, brilliant, has a great character design, and is voiced by Kathryn Hahn. And because she was also unexpected. When you're making superhero movies or even writing comics today, it's hard to keep things feeling fresh and unpredictable. And this was honestly something I myself was not expecting when I was watching the movie. I also just love that she has kind of like a Tom Baker's Doctor Who vibe going on with her headband and her scarf. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I just felt like it was cool. Maybe I'm just imagining things because I love Doctor Who too much. You asked for the newest villains and you got it. Cadaverous first appeared in the 2019 Spider-Man series co-written by J.J. Abrams and his son Henry Abrams. It's an experience. Cadaverous is a combination of technology and organic parts, a human face, and almost human mind, albeit one that seems to struggle to speak properly. Takes him forever to like get a sentence out. Make up this huge cybernetic monster. In the first issue, we handily see him defeat Peter as Spider-Man and kill MJ, leaving their son Ben to grow up moody and without his mom, and sort of without his dad, who abandoned him. He's got a hook hand, you know, life is hard. It now seems that Cadaverous has a villainous plot, and that young Ben and possibly his absentee hook-handed father Peter will have to work together to unravel and eventually stop said plot. Oh yeah, and he's also got an army of robots. Number 10, Red Goblin. Red Goblin is the amalgamation of the Carnage symbiote, combined with Norman Osborn's Green Goblin. When you mix a blood-fused symbiote like Carnage together with the insane Green Goblin, you get Red Goblin, a pretty fearsome foe to be reckoned with. Spider-Man had to renounce his mantle to protect his family and fight Red Goblin as Peter Parker, and had to also call in backup to defeat this epic version of Norman Osborn introduced a few years back. This whole experience as well severely messed with Norman's mind, and later resulted in him believing that he was in fact Carnage, aka Cletus Cassidy, and was not at all Norman Osborn, forgetting all about that life until another mysterious villain, Kindred, gave him back his sanity. Thanks, Kindred, that's so nice of you. Number 9. Number 8, the Griever at the end of all things. So, I always want to call this villain the Griever at the end of the universe, but that must be because I'm a huge Hitchhiker's Guide fan, and that's just bubbling back to the surface in my mind. But it's not the Griever at the end of the universe, it's the Griever at the end of all things. The Griever at the end of all things was a new villain who showed up and seemingly killed Molecule Man, proving how powerful and scary she was as early as her first appearance. I gotta say, I think her design is cool, but I'm kinda disappointed that she hasn't resurfaced in any Fantastic Four issues since her first fight with the FF team. The fight was so epic that the Fantastic Four actually had to call in a ton of backup, calling on temporary and rotating members of the team to join them, and finally revealing after the events on Battleworld and the recreation of the multiverse that they actually weren't dead as all their fellow heroes were made to believe, but were actually alive and rebuilding everything in secret. So that let that cat out of the bag. Number 7, the Inheritors. Not everyone is a huge fan of these energy vampires, but they play an integral role in the Spider-Verse story arc. In both of the Spider-Verse story arcs, to be honest, Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon. The family of vampires who feed off of spider totems and any other animal-based totems were an extension of the original villain, Morlun. Morlun first appeared in the Spider-Man comics in 2001, and it wasn't until 2014 that we would meet the rest of his family, the Inheritors. These energy vampires threaten the existence of the entire Spider-Verse on more than one occasion. Lucard himself, who was part of the Inheritor family, would end up defecting, becoming the Master Weaver. In the end, when the Inheritors ended up cloned and returned due to the error of Superior Spider-Man, the head of the family, Solus, and the rest of the Inheritors ended up defeated at the hands of an Enigma Force-powered Miles Morales armed with the Sword Vigor. And it was discovered that Solus was actually behind all the endless hunger that all of his family felt. Because of this, the Spider Army decided to bring back the Inheritors once more, with each of their consciousness transferred into a baby clone of each of them. Free from the hunger that made them evil, they were then all adopted by Spider-Man. Ah, cutest little baby villains ever. We'll see if they grow up to be evil, but I doubt it. They're pretty cute. Number 6, Region. Region was also known as Augustus Roman. What a name, by the way, Augustus Roman. He was the man behind a prison known as the Cellar on Rikers Island, which housed some of the most dangerous criminals. Rikers Island itself is known for prisons of this sort. The difference with this one was that Roman was actually using the prison as a means of creating his own superpowered suit to go after the Avengers with. He was mistreating the prisoners, using them for their powers, which he was then able to utilize within his own suit. Roman was obsessed with controlling and containing the superpowered abilities of all superhumans, which he also aimed to do with the Avengers. This had a lot to do with his own backstory. He's got some feelings about superhumans, let me just say. During his fight with the team, we got to see him take on not just Spider-Man, but we also saw MJ join the fight as well, donning the Iron Spider suit. I love when writers let MJ get involved in some of the action. Regent proved to be a challenging foe for the Avenger team, and for Spider-Man, and for MJ, for everyone that was involved. Number 5. Red Goblin. During a fight with Spider-Man in The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, issue 798, it was revealed that Norman Osborn was bonded with the Carnage symbiote. Dun dun dun! Very scary stuff, guys, very scary stuff here. Spider-Man, of course, had an appropriate response to this news, and I've got a page from that comic in the links below there for you guys. Red Goblin then proceeded to threaten Spider-Man's loved ones, promising he would kill them, not even as Green Goblin would with like a fall, but only as the Red Goblin could, unless Peter Parker gave up being Spider-Man. Also, the Red Goblin killing your family and loved ones is like definitely not a good idea. Terrified Parker agreed to the Red Goblin's terms, but of course he double-crossed him, promising at the end of the comic to fight on, not as Spider-Man, but as Peter Parker. Gasp. Red Goblin would then chase after his own family, his son Harry, his daughter-in-law Liz, and his 2 grandchildren Normie and Stanley. He was accosted during the ongoings of this family affair by Human Torch, Flash, Silk, and Peter Parker, and later Anti-Venom. But due to the combined powers of the Goblin formula and the Carnage symbiote, he was pretty much able to easily defeat those guys, because that's just how terrifying and powerful Red Goblin is. Not to mention, he's also one of the most ruthless and diabolical villains that Parker has pretty much ever come up against. So yeah, don't mess with Red Goblin. He will mess you up. You don't even know. Number 4. Knull. Knull has been at the center of one of the biggest, most exciting Venom story arcs yet, Donny Cates' Absolute Carnage. This storyline features, in fact, a spectacularly terrifying cast of great big bads, including a resurrected Cletus Cassidy in the Grendel symbiote, evoking an even more psychotic version of the recently deceased Carnage symbiote, Shriek, the Church of the New Darkness, and Doppelganger, an evil version of Spider-Man, basically. Knull seeks to gain control over Cletus and be reborn. As such, Dark Carnage, as we now know him, prompted by Knull, attempts to reclaim all of the codexes of those who were once bonded with symbiotes. Codexes are basically like a leftover remnant or an imprint of those symbiotes within one's body. Stored within the spine, by the way. Yeah, so you gotta take it out of the spine. Meaning that we see Dark Carnage as well as a whole bunch of other similarly influenced symbiotes go on a rampage, devouring spines of beloved heroes, villains, and characters both alive and dead, left, right, and center, who were once bonded with any symbiote pretty much ever. Yo, if you guys haven't read Absolute Carnage, you need to read at least some of it. Just at least like a tiny. Number 3. White Sword. White Sword was one of the mutants who was part of the original mutant nation of Okara, which Apocalypse and his wife Genesis ruled. He was one of the leaders who was sent along with his army of 100 champions to defeat the Amenthi who attacked. He was believed to have been victorious, but was also lost to his people as a result. A healer capable of resurrection, he would revive his army daily to fight the Amenthi horde the following day. It's said that this drove the White Sword somewhat insane, and when he later ran into his own people such as Genesis, who herself had been sent out with a mutant army under her command, he saw even them as his enemy and he attacked, defeating Genesis. He will be one of the champions to fight on the side of Arakko opposing Krakoa in the Ten of Swords tournament. He also happens to look similar to Apocalypse, but with different armor. Maybe you don't see that, but I definitely see that. Number 2. The Viscora. The Viscora are a mysterious alien race that made a brief appearance in Cable Volume 4 Issue 5 as part of the Ten of Swords event. We run into them on the Sword Headquarters space station known as Peak 7. It seems the Viscora swiftly invaded Sword's orbital HQ, and within 10 minutes had pretty much decimated almost the entire crew. We know this from the log featured in the issue. Those few surviving crew had no other option but to completely shut down the station's power in order to prevent the Viscora from progressing any further with their invasion. To prevent anyone from potentially awakening the station or the Viscora, they didn't send out any SOS calls at the time of powering everything down, and essentially just kind of disappeared. Opal Luna Saturnine was the one who compelled Cable and his parents, Marvel Girl and Cyclops, to awaken the station once more. Though her motives remain unknown, it's speculated that she wanted to harm the family to help prevent Cable and possibly all mutants from being able to enter the Otherworld tournament, although her motives are still very foggy in my opinion. Alien. The Viscora seem obsessed with cleansing, dissecting, and learning of any alien life forms. In other words, they pretty much want to kill everyone. Number 1. Donald Blake. Thor issue number 9 of the newest run from 2020 starts off a new story arc titled Prey. At the end of the issue, we see the return of Donald Blake, a former persona of Thor's who basically became his own person but then was trapped in a hell dimension. Driven mad, Dr. Donald Blake has returned, escaped his prison, and seems to be looking for revenge on all of the gods. This is a refreshing and interesting take on an old character, bringing him back as a villain now. It's what I really find intriguing about this new run on Thor, which I thought was maybe going to be trying to take us back to ones with, the title character himself and everything else, and yet we have amazing things like this happening. Donald Blake returning to us not as the same old ally, but as a villain. Shortly after escaping, Dr. Blake is confronted by Loki, so that's the god that he deals with first. Surprisingly, Blake makes quick work of Loki, vowing that he will no longer be a refuge for any god ever again, and they will no longer be able to hide from him. Thor, I think he's coming for you. I think so. Number 10. Luminous. Luminous was actually a pretty cool new villain who seemed to really only be used for one story arc. She was one of the only cool things really to come out of the realization that Wanda and Pietro Maximoff were not actually Magneto's children as we'd been led to believe for years. In fact, they weren't even mutants. They were the product of the High Evolutionaries' experimentation, which fit more in line with their origins in the MCU, which I guess is why we changed that. No, I'm not mad about it. Not at all. It turns out the High Evolutionary had also used their genetic material to create a sister for them both, known as Luminous. She possessed both the chaos magic, reality warping powers of Scarlet Witch, as well as the super speed of Quicksilver, and was originally ordered by her father, the High Evolutionary, to kill her genetic siblings. She tried real hard. Number 9. Pets of Evil Masters. While the Pets of Evil Masters might not be the most impactful villains around, they are definitely some of the most adorable. These villains obviously seek to thwart the Pet Avengers, the pets of Earth's most mightiest heroes. Like their heroic opponents, the Pets of Evil Masters are exactly what they sound like, the pets of some of the most vile villains in the Marvel Universe. They are led by Doctor Doom's pet Vulture, Vulture Von Doom, and include Thori, Loki's Hellhound, and Bitey McSpidey who isn't stated to be owned by any specific villain, but is implied to be the spider that was responsible for creating Spider-Man. On Earth 616, that spider may have died, but on Earth 97161, where the Pets of Evil Masters are from, I guess that little spider lives on, seeking to wreak all kinds of havoc. And before we move on to this next part, just a quick thank you to you for sticking around watching this video, and if you haven't already, something that helps us out a ton here at the channel is clicking that like button, so do it. Click the like button, and if you did already, thank you so much for doing so, it really helps us out. Number 7. Apocalypse's children. / first horsemen, I suppose. These kids are the ones who obviously inspired Apocalypse in the future when it came to naming and creating his horsemen thereafter. Their names are the same as those Apocalypse would normally take for his horsemen: war, death, famine, and pestilence. These children made their first appearance recently and then resurfaced once more extremely recently in the newest X-Men series. They hold a grudge against Apocalypse, who they believe abandoned his family. They blame him for such, and while you might think that Apocalypse is a villain, so who cares, right now he is aligned with the other mutants of Krakoa, and as such is actually considered mostly a good guy? For now anyways. He did do some shady stuff, so not so nice Apocalypse. Or however we're saying your name now, Krakoan symbols with an A in the middle, however I say that in Krakoan. Number 6. Dark Carnage. Dark Carnage is like Cletus Cassidy but dead, and brought back to life using the Grendel symbiote, and then turned into a towering skeletal monster that is hungry for your spine. Well, maybe not your spine specifically, but if you bonded with a symbiote ever, alive or dead, he's hungry for that spine. It's finger licking good. Delicious spines. Dark Carnage was sort of the final phase of Cletus Cassidy, who sought to awaken Knull by gathering all the codices from within all those beings who had ever bonded with a symbiote. Doing so would awaken the Dark God, which was just the kind of chaotic party Cassidy was all about. And attempting to do this, he perished, but was ultimately successful as Knull is now awake and headed for Venom and Earth. Cletus may be gone as a result, but the villain has died many times and returned in many different incarnations, such as this new one, Dark Carnage. I'm excited to see if he comes back again, and when he does, just which version of Carnage we'll see next. Maybe some kind of dark immortal Carnage. Number 3. Mutant Trauma Support Group. The Mutant Trauma Support Group is a new group with an age-old message to deliver to all humans who hate mutants: you are not alone. The group offers support without judgment to those who have been wronged or felt like they have been wronged by mutants. They offer no judgment, only support. No hate speech or degrading comments are allowed in the community unless directed towards mutants. The group appears to have all their revenge missions and anti-mutant gatherings organized via an online community, possibly via a social media channel or some kind of exclusive forum. They first appeared in 2020's Wolverine in issue number 4, where they targeted, you guessed it, Wolverine. Although they had their plans of vengeance cut short by an unexpected guest, it's likely that there are many more members of the group that we could run into in the future. Number 1. Kang. Kang the Conqueror is believed to be coming to the MCU in this next cinematic phase. So while he might not be a new villain in terms of the comics, in terms of the MCU, he's going to be one of the freshest we've seen. Once he shows up, that is, in Ant-Man 3, which is expected to release in 2022. Woo! 2022, that's a long way away. It is believed that the brilliant Jonathan Majors will be playing Kang, or at least one form of him, and that he'll be showing up in Ant-Man 3. And that's according to the Ant-Man 3 IMDb page. It's right on there if you look at it. The cool thing with Kang, however, is that he's a time-traveling villain who, as a result, has been known by many different identities and aliases throughout his history. So while Jonathan Majors may be playing one version of him, there might be other actors also playing Kang. The weird thing though with Kang is that he's a time-traveling villain who as a result has been known by many different identities and aliases. So yeah, it could be great or it could be really confusing. We've known him as Immortus, Ramatut, and even at one point as Iron Lad. It'll be interesting to see how Marvel and Disney aim to integrate Kang and what this means for not just the main continuity but the potential multiverse within the MCU.